Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Riptide Review. As always, we are sponsored by YSS Dive, located out of Hoodsport, Washington and Tacoma, Washington. So if you need any dive gear or need to get some scuba classes, be sure to reach out to YSS Dive. Now today we're going to be talking about some heated vests, we're going to be talking about some flashlights, and an SMB. So let's go ahead and roll the intro. Now, the first thing on the agenda today is going to be the Venture Heat Vest. This heated vest has been a staple of my dive kit for about a year now, and overall I have nothing but good things to say about it. Pretty much anybody that I've given this to try has ended up purchasing one very quickly. Now, this heated vest also comes with a wrist controller to allow you to switch between 3 different heat values. This is helpful because while you're diving, you might get a little too hot and you want to turn it down, or you might be a little bit chilly after a couple hours underwater and you want to give it a little bit of an extra bump. Every time you change a heat setting or turn on or off the controller, it gives you a haptic feedback in the vest itself, which is handy if you're like me and you're teaching students, moving your arms a lot, and accidentally bump that button sometimes. So you do know when you're altering your heat level to a different level. The Venture Heat has 2 battery packs, both of which are mounted on the front and just off of center. This allows you to adjust those batteries, turn one on, turn one off if needed throughout the dive. Every time you turn on the heat vest, it gives you a haptic feedback, so you're not accidentally turning it on and forgetting about it. The performance of this vest was not the only thing I was impressed with though. The customer care that I received was also fantastic. Right off the bat, my original vest was only drawing from 1 battery instead of both batteries at the same time, which was leading to issues of me having to charge my batteries every night. I actually didn't even know it was supposed to be doing that. However, somebody else with the vest was telling me that they were getting 5-6 dives out of theirs and I was only getting 1 or 2. The customer care that I received when I had to send my vest in for repairs was prompt and responsive, which is a serious relief to anybody who's ever dealt with expensive dive gear that you need to get back in the water with. It's also clear to me that Venture Heat is taking customer feedback very seriously, because when I received my new vest, I had noticed that a couple improvements had been made. This is nice to see because not all manufacturers care what customers think, and typically their response will be, on the next iteration of this we will fix it, instead of fixing it midline right away. Now for my arbitrary score that really doesn't mean anything and is based off of a whim, is going to be probably a 9 out of 10. This is a pretty close to perfect product. The only thing I can think of that they might be able to improve would be battery placement. I have heard other people complain about the placement of the battery. Me, not so much. I don't find it a very annoying location at all, but I have heard people complain about it, so that is maybe one thing that could be improved on. Overall, I love this vest though, and I'm going to continue to dive it, which is the best review I can give. Now moving right along, I want to talk about the next item, which is going to be the Orca Torch D710. Now, I mostly bought this light on a whim just to see how it would hold up against a deep blue or a Kraken and get an idea of where they stood in the dive light world. The D710 has 4 different stages of light. We have our highlight, our not as bright light, and our not as bright light, and then we have turbo mode, which is really handy, I guess, if you need to get the attention of a boat or your buddy who's not paying attention. I don't really see why you would need that much light, even here in the Northwest, but who knows, you might. This light's beam is a slightly more narrow beam, but I actually prefer a narrow beam over a flood beam. It allows me to control the light, and also when I'm kind of sneaking up on some critters, I can sort of look in their crevice without pointing my light directly at them. Now the D710 does come with 2 rechargeable batteries and a carry case. The rechargeable batteries are USB-C, which is handy because you don't have to lug around a charger everywhere you go. It's a lot more accessible to charge when you're on the go, in your car, yada, yada, yada. And as far as battery life goes, I typically get about 5-6 dives out of one charge, which means that you can get roughly 12 if you're using both batteries. As far as build quality goes, the D710 has a nice firm button that is not easily pushed. If you put a little bit of effort into it, it does ignite, but this prevents us from accidentally turning it on if it is bouncing around on our BCDs. This is handy, and that's actually one of the points that I really do like about this. It also tells you the battery level in the button, similar to your Kraken or your Big Blues. As far as reliability goes, this light is pretty good. However, I have started noticing some irregularities around 500 dives. At this point, it started flickering, switching between modes during my dive. That's not something I like to see in a dive light, and it does unfortunately mean that it's going to be going to my spare gear bag. So, as far as is this a light for professionals? Probably not. You can easily get 600-700 dives out of a Big Blue, probably more. I've never had one actually fail on me. So for the price point, I would say that this is a great light for recreational divers, probably not so much for professional divers though. So if I were to give this an arbitrary score that, as we address every time, doesn't mean anything, I'd probably give it about a 7 out of 10. It's good enough for most people, but not so much for people that are either instructing or doing commercial diving, people who are in the water all the time. It's not exactly a light for them. Lastly, we are going to talk about the Gravity DSMB. You might be wondering why we're even reviewing this SMB. Well, when I purchased my Gravity wing and plate system, I bought an SMB to match. However, there are a lot of things about this SMB that I am not a fan of, and I thought that I would make a buyer's beware video. Firstly, it comes with a single bungee strap. This does not hold the SMB very well at all, especially since it's like 6 feet long. I often find myself diving with a tail, especially after doing open water classes when we talk about the SMB. When you consider the width and the length of this SMB, this is basically a lift bag. It will pull you right off your safety stop, and that's clearly not what we're trying to achieve during a safety stop, right? So, an issue that I have with this is the fact that you can only get it about a quarter of the way full before it starts pulling you up to the surface, and that means by the time it gets to the surface, it's just a big floppy mess at the surface. That is not ideal for waving down boats, especially if you're doing a drift dive. Before starting this review, I did notice that they have added a second band to this SMB, which will help it from unraveling. However, the width of it has not changed and the length of it has not changed. I'm not even exaggerating. I have used this as a lift bag in the past to pull up broken mooring lines and the like. We don't need that much in an SMB, so just be aware if you are picking one of these up, be careful when you're igniting this underwater. Another thing that I find kind of irritating is that I am diving a Gravity Paragon, which is their wing and plate, and it comes with an SMB pocket. This doesn't fit. Why even have the pocket? It'll cram in there, sure, but it's really uncomfortable to dive. So it's really obnoxious. Anyway, if you are looking at one of these SMBs, just be aware. It's big, it's bulky. You can clip it to the outside of your BCD or something like that, and it should be fine. It will still work. However, be aware that if you are doing a lot of DSMB, mid-water safety stops, things like that, where you might have to use this and you're retaining your depth is important, be aware that this might not be the SMB for you. I personally will probably be moving on to a newer model. That's going to be it for today, guys. As always, we're brought to you by YSS Dive out of Hoodsport and Tacoma, Washington. If you do need scuba gear or some scuba classes, be sure to check out yssdive.com. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Riptide Review, and we'll catch you on the next one.